Now that we know that it is possible, and we can do it with fun, let's see the next subject, that is Planet Positive. I'm Lala Deinzelem. I'm from Brazil. Tomorrow I will speak at 12:50. I'm a futurist, specialist in new economies and collaboration, but basically I design processes and tools for all the ones that design solutions for the future becoming ecosystems, and to help this kind of thing be continuous in time. But I'll talk about this tomorrow. Now, I would like to invite Mila to join me, and I would like to invite John Havens, that is joining us from the US. Fabulous, now we are there. So I will introduce you. Fabulous. Can you talk a little bit, John, for us to see if everything is okay? Say hello.
Sure. Hello.
Well, great. So I will speak the least possible because we want to listen to them. So Mila is a senior consultant and strategic advisor to institutions, for-profit, non-profit governments. And she has a huge background on whatever you can imagine in culture, sustainability, community, all this diversity of things that she knows from experience. And by knowing this, she is able to build bridges between the very different sectors of society she acts on, and this very much needed bridge between theory and practice. And she does that in designing experiments for inner and social transformation. Everything is together. And with the idea of remembering us as nature and guardians of life, as Edgar just said. And one of her many titles is Chief Weaver of Planet Positive 2030 project. And then I come to John. John is himself a bridge. This is not in your CV, but I will tell it. He's a musician and an actor. And since the very beginning, he is interested in this bridge. And he's the lead of sustainability practice for the IEEE Standards Association. The IEEE, everything we have has something to do with IEEE because it's the largest technological and engineering professional association worldwide, advancing technology for humanity. And John is the executive director of the IEEE Global Initiative on Ethics of Autonomous and Intelligent Systems, who was responsible for the creation and iteration of a body of work known as ethically aligned design, a vision for prioritizing human well-being with autonomous and intelligent systems that was utilized by the UN nations, the OECD, IBM, and dozens of organizations to create their AI principles, policies, and technologies. Previously, John was an EVP of social media at PR firm Porto Novelli, lead business development at Blog Talk Radio, etc. So he is what Yuval Harari is looking for, because the historian Yuval Harari all the time he's saying, okay, the world is led by engineers, but the engineers not usually have a humanistic, ethical, and sustainable perspective. So here is the proof that, yes, this perspective exists. And John will explain us a little bit of what is this Planet Positive initiative. And then Mila will tell us about her role. So please, John, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, Lala, for the lovely introduction, and to Thelma for the invitation to speak, and to Mila, who helped facilitate my being here. And thank you so much. Obrigado. So you already explained IEEE, the global heart of the engineering world, both for academia and professional engineers. Planet Positive 2030 is a program of the IEEE Standards Association. There are multiple operating units and part of IEEE, and the Standards Association is known for creating the Wi-Fi standard, a lot of internet protocols. And in my role of artificial intelligence and ethics that you mentioned, I was able to help work with about 700 people to create a big document that's called Ethically Aligned Design that inspired, and you mentioned this, it inspired a series of standards that are the first of its kind for IEEE. They're formally socio and technical, relating to areas of ethics that are beyond technology. That work inspired Planet Positive 2030, which is focused on sustainability, but where sustainability means longevity. And we've created about 13 committees. We have about 400 people in this community so far, and we'd love anyone who's there in Lisbon to join our work. My email address, I'll make it available in the chat room, and I'm sure it's easily findable. But basically by joining a committee, and we have committees focused on everything from economics to rivers and lakes to human culture and wisdom. Mila's one of the co-chairs there. We're picturing the 2030 that we need to get to in the sense of what are the scientists from IPCC or the Paris work or Edinburgh, all the COP work. What do we know we have to get to achieve a planet that won't go above 1.5 degrees and cause more devastating harm to our climate? Because we're currently in the state right now of a climate emergency. Climate change doesn't really, that sort of says like, hey, the climate's changing. That's not enough. We are in the state of a climate emergency. Most humans around the world are suffering today in 2022 from the effects of whether it's Pakistan floods, hurricane in Florida, et cetera, et cetera. So if we want to keep the planet safe for a majority or all people, our logic is to create, in one sense, not a fictional story, but a picture and a narrative of what the science says we need to do by 2030 to keep the world from getting dangerously hot, unsafe, without water. And so each of the committees is actually writing as the opening of their chapter, an opening narrative written as if we're already there in a safe and flourishing 2030. And this is a method that some people call backcasting or scenario planning. I used to do it in public relations. Most people do it in the design world when they're building a product. And a key priority of our first paper, it's called Strong Sustainability by Design, is reflected in the subtitle of the paper, which is prioritizing ecological flourishing and human well-being for all technology design. And what that means is, whereas GDP as one very myopic or limited metric equates growth with societal success, that is nowhere near enough to recognize all that makes up human beings and our beautiful planet and the species that live there. First and foremost, in all technology and policy design, the first question has to be not just how do I know that what I'm building won't hurt the planet, but how will it improve the planet? And that's the positive mindset. Net zero means let's not hurt the planet. Planet positive or net positive, organizations like the World Wildlife Foundation have created this term, means that by giving back more to the planet, we are actually thinking about sustaining where the resources, which is not even really the best way to say things about the living planet, who's our mother, basically. But these resources have to stay around. So number one is, what am I building or what policy am I creating? Do I know with a series of accountable metrics, like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, like multiple ESG goals, environmental, societal, and governance goals, how can I say to people, in the same way that today someone can say, this is how I'm pretty sure we're going to make money, which is fine, making profit. It's just the growth, exponential growth is the issue. But first I can say, how do I know ecological flourishing is going to happen? And then secondly, in conjunction with that is human well-being, meaning measuring things like caregiving, mental health, etc. These may sound like challenges that are very difficult to overcome. They're actually not. It's about widening the lens of what we look at and what we account for, literally. What do we look at and say, this has value? And we have to start from the point of the earth and our people, all people, have the most value. So we have to see them first, recognize them first with the indigenous, and Mila can speak more about this if she wants. The idea of free, prior, and informed consent, really involving marginalized people into a process that oftentimes is dominated by the global north, North America. And long story short, we'd love to get you involved, and we're working on this paper that we're going to help create more standards for. And then we also have a second paper and project called Accountable Sustainability by, and we welcome your thoughts there. We're actually creating a pragmatic sustainability assessment tool. So whatever stage an organization is at, they can say, this is how we're doing in regards to our sustainability footprint, the SDGs, et cetera. And then we want to provide with our experts, with IEEE resources and partner resources, pragmatic advice to work towards a 2030 that we all can feel is going to help all the planet and people flourish. Thank you, and over to Mila.
Well, that is fabulous, because really one of the main problems we face whenever we try to change things in any scale is exactly the standards. Working with governments and UN and whatever, every time things are stuck there. Okay, but what about GDP? So if we don't have other standards and measures, and also the new narratives, because the only thing we're never taught on how to envision different futures. So these backcasting and scenarios are fabulous. So now, Mila, please, if there is something else you would like to add to the way I presented you, please, it's a pleasure. And also, can you tell us your role in this process, and then we can understand this bridge on how can people really be part of the process.
Yes, so first of all, can you hear me? Can you all hear me? Yes. So first of all, I'd like to say hello, my other selves. Hello, my relations. That is very much an indigenous greeting, that we are all connected. We are all part of life and nature. And I am Chief Weaver of Planet Positive 2030. That means that I'm weaving all the committees that is growing continuously. There's 14 committees at the moment. And rather than explaining what weaving means, but first of all, I'll just say weaving is all about relationship. Relationship to self, relationship to each other, relationship to society in general, relationship to planet and beyond. Past, future generations included. So rather than explaining it, I just want to invite a quick 1 minute of experiment. If you're willing to play with me, bringing Edgar's playing invitation. So I'd like to ask you to just shut your eyes for a few seconds, all of you, if possible, and just take yourself to anything that reminds you of nature, the word nature, whatever that means to you. Just take a moment. Let's bring nature into this room. So I invite you now to open your eyes and put your hands up. If what nature came for you was mountains, rivers, friends, family, everything that is out there, mountains. So I'm having a little bit of, okay, so most of you are putting your hands up for mountains, lakes, rivers. So here's the invitation. You are nature. I am nature. So when you imagine nature, how do you bring yourself, because you are nature? All our past generation, future generations are nature. And in designing Planet Positive as a chief weaver, that is one of the processes and many other processes that John has also experienced in every meeting that we have online, as well as in-person events like this. Those are the things that I bring in to understand that we need to design as if we are nature, not somewhere out there, because then you're designing an object. You're not designing something that is embodied for you as the guardian of life, as a steward of nature, because this is our role, is to play, to celebrate, and also design from that space.
Thank you. You were talking recently at the House of the Lords in UK, where you live. Can you, and just for us to understand a little bit more of the kind of experiments and information that you bring, what was the subject then?
So the subject at the House of Lords was well-being of society. And to relate to what we are doing at Planet Positive, I said the well-being of the society cannot exist without the well-being of the environment that society sits on. So if you're only focusing on the human elements, we are so interdependent with everything around us, life, nature, past, future generation. If you do not consider this complex system, living, experiential and evolving element in life, then that well-being of society will only be static. So that is the conversation at the House of Lords that is continuing, and the focus was the well-being of society in the UK, but beyond that, so it's spiritually, emotional, physical, mental well-being, but not just humans, beyond that too. So that relates to the Planet Positive 2030.
And before going a little bit more on Planet Positive relating to Planetiers, I studied biology in the origin, and I think it's very curious that we consider that there is nature and us. And so why is the nest of a bird nature? And why isn't this nature? Why is the language of the pheromones of bees nature, but the internet isn't? So I would like to know your perception. First you, Mila, and then I come back to John. Do you see a separation of us and the stuff we produce and other animals and the stuff they produce?
I think this is the illusion of separation that has been passed down from generation to generation. So in the Colombian Kogis, which are up in the mountains, the Mamos, the indigenous for 10,000 years, they've never been colonialized. And one of the things they talk about is that we've been so separated, and there's also science that proves this now from a neurobiological standpoint, that there's been social construct. You need to go back to the origin of the thought. It's beyond generation. And to then make that visible unto all of us, to then make a different choice. So the illusion of separation, illusion of control, is something that humans have had, and I've demonstrated this in a 24-hour clock, where 4.5 billion years of planet comes about, and you see the earth, the water, the species coming about, 5 different extinctions, and near midnight, that's when human came in, 200,000 years. It's a very small little, and yet we think we are the dominant species, and we are not designing as and remembering our original instructions as humans, our ancestral wisdom that has that. They work with the land. Everything is designed within the land. So what if the future is now? What would you design? To Agra's point, what would we be doing? How do we design that nature rewards cooperation, nature banks on diversity, nature curbs limits of excess? How would we design that? If you gave that to children, I'm sure they'd come up with the most amazing
it does.
thing.
It does. And I have this Create Futures program, thousands of desirable futures, and this kind of thing appears. So John, do you think there is this separation between nature and technology? First question. And then, considering the context of Planetiers, can you tell us a little more on how the whole community can profit on the research and results you're bringing on Planet Positive?
Sure. The separation question is always challenging to me, and I love Mila's answer. Data is something in artificial intelligence we don't talk about enough. People mention artificial intelligence like it's this uniform thing where you can have an algorithm that's very simple, machine reading language, or a very complex, eventual form of artificial general intelligence or deep learning. And there's techniques, and then there's also products. A robot may have artificial intelligence algorithms within it. But the data that's tracked from humans, our data, that's used in those algorithms, when if that's not a separation, that process, I'll call it, there's oftentimes a very big risk of humans sort of giving up the chance to really think about their data and their identity in relation to themselves, other people, and certainly nature. And in that sense, the stuff that we're creating today, the amazing tools, artificial intelligence and others, there's no question all the positive things that the technology can do. The separation, I think, is that certainly in North America, we haven't been equipped to question aspects of wealth and worth beyond things like growth and productivity. And I think that is the ultimate separation, is that as humans, our worth and value comes only after we do something. We have to earn a certain amount of money. We have to have a certain amount of notoriety or fame according to other people's, definitions of what fame or popularity is. And then the stuff that we create, depending on the context and where we are in our culture, that would reflect those same values. Versus when we're born, are we born into a society or a community that says, you have worth simply because you're here, you're part of this family. I feel so much more warmth even though I'm not in any indigenous communities. I'm not, indigenous from that background. But the logic of that, whether it's in a church or a synagogue or a mosque or a non-faith-based community-oriented group, this is where the connection to other people makes the most sense, and then the objects that we build, I think, reflect that connection versus the separation that comes from anything that we build where the metrics of success are first about fiscal growth or sort of competitive growth. Anyway, not sure if that answered your first question, but for your second question, by the way, I should say I'm speaking as John. I have a lot of influence in the program, Planet Positive, but there's hundreds of people writing these chapters. People like Mila are chairs of our chapters. The volunteers make up and really create the documents and standards. But that said, the goal of the work, as I mentioned before, is to really try to reframe design like we tried to do with ethically aligned design and say it's two different things. If you produce a piece of technology, artificial intelligence or otherwise, and then you say, hey, is this ethical, right? Not the actual object itself, but is this device, as it functions in the world, harming people, or what are the ethics of this device? If you build first and then ask those questions, you will cause harm. It's the same as if you built something and said, will this sell? And you haven't done any research about will people buy it, then it might fail. So our logic with AI was to say, do you understand end user values? Are you honoring human and environmental rights first? And if not, then you're going to have problems. Versus at the beginning, at the outset of design, prioritize human rights, human values, and environmental safety, etc. And then have accountable check-ins, whether even it's quarterly, like fiscal check-ins, or certainly every half year. how is this device, this AI device, when it's being used, really, increasing environmental flourishing and human well-being? And then that's the same logic, but even more so with sustainability, all these amazing technologies and methodologies to help land regeneration, et cetera. First of all, indigenous land regeneration for millennia, First Nations people who have been, they still are the primary stewards of 80% of the world's biodiversity. We have to invite the people who are the experts in our planetary ecosystems, which is the First Nations and indigenous, into every process we do, respectfully and not in a sense of like, let's take more from you, the information that you have, but how can we respectfully learn and honor you better? And this includes reparations, et cetera. And then secondly is, we have to really recognize that one of the hardest things about well-being is not measuring it, but feeling that we have worth to be allowed to get it. And in the United States and around the world, things like suicide, we're at pandemic levels with isolation, loneliness, and suicide in multiple parts of the world. It's not just North America. And society has to say, is a metric of success that we help people want to stay here in the world. And more importantly, not just to avoid, suicide, but to increase flourishing, where joy is a first, sense of involvement, community. If these become the metrics of success for society, then no one's going to question, hey, this piece of technology, this piece of policy, is it increasing the planet's flourishing and human well-being first? It's just going to be the air we breathe. And so in that sense with Planetiers, that's the connection I see from the community, this joy. Not just to sort of like, here's what we have to get done, but here's the joy, the abundance that will happen when we prioritize the right things. So if that makes sense, and again, I know we're doing a shorter session, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about Planet Positive and to be here with my dear friend Mila and also with you, Lala.
Now, putting the question ahead and changing, this is fabulous, changing design, Vista. And Mila, can you tell us a little bit about what are the next steps?
The next steps were, so every time we evolve, just like nature, it needs to co-evolve with more people. So we invite everyone to, every time we are here at an in-person event, we invite people to come on board and bring in, because it is a collective intelligence. It's not something that is IEEE. It has to belong to everyone. It has to have everyone participating.
And is there a way we can join, be part, follow the process? Can you give us a hint, a link?
Yes, there is a link. You have the link there, over there. John, so we can share it with Telma, and it can be shared out when there's a post-event.
So if we go to the website of IEEE, we can find Planet Positive, isn't it? And maybe, because I think what you're doing it's very important in every field, because everything is similar, so it can be applied everywhere. And it reminds me, again, a story I heard, that if we imagine that someone from 1,000 years ago arrived now, he would think that we are gods, much more than he could ever imagine, because we fly, we speak through screens and so on. But if we would talk about how difficult life is, it would be the same. So the person 1,000 years ago would say, oh, life is difficult, we don't have time, we have to struggle. And now, again, oh, life is difficult, we have to struggle. And in 1,000 years, oh, it's so difficult to meditate and teletransport to other galaxies. So what we are saying, that these standards help us to be more satisfied, because no one teaches us how to be satisfied, how to find joy and fulfillment in what we have and what's happening. And doing this from both human philosophical and technological basis is fabulous. So I invite you to the last words. We are running out of time.
Yeah. Can I just add that
Yes.
it's really about potentiality? It's beyond problem solving. Because if you're just focusing on a particular societal problem, a particular environmental, a technological problem, you're boxed in. And coming back to, Agir's point is about going through potentiality, because when you get to that potentiality, what if planet pink positive? How can we co-create a planet pink positive? That just takes you back as children into a sandbox where you play and you become creative. The potentiality is so immense, it's infinite. But if you focus just on problem solving, it gets you stuck onto just a particular problem instead of seeing it as a connective tissue of many different relationships, both visible and invisible.
Perfect. And John? So your final
It-
words?
Yep, just to build on what Mila said, I had the opportunity to meet William McDonough, who's a hero of mine. He's done the cradle-to-cradle logic. He created the idea of the circular economy. And he often says in his talks, it's very funny, but it's true. Like if you're in a relationship talking about your wife or your husband, and someone says, how's your relationship going? And you answered, oh, my relationship is very sustainable. Like that's not how you talk about the partner who you love more than anything in the world. To Mila's point, solving problems is not really the goal here in one sense. It's recognizing that the beautiful planet that we live on is us. As Mila said, we are nature, we are water, we're air, we're literally part of the planet. But just as important, I'll call it the spiritual aspect of what I refer to as Mother Earth. She needs us, but also she's going to let us know that, she's had enough in one sense, not from a threatening standpoint, but just humans need to recognize their worth and focus on loving themselves in a positive way, not in a selfish way. And that's how they can love others, which includes the planet. And the real opportunity and joy is for caregiving to become the new, as it were, law of the land, where what we measure ourselves against is how well do we love others, how do we put them first. And then it doesn't become a challenge, it's not a problem to solve, it's a joy to wake up every day and say, what is God or Mother Earth or the universe going to bring me, where I will have use and purpose by being useful and helpful and loving to others. That I think very much reflects the Planetier logic that I know, and that's how I'm trying to live my life.
That is wonderful. So with this, we come to an end. And now I realize that I was interacting from your perspective to the floor. But no, there's a screen here. And thank you so much, Mila. Thank you so much, John. And we are so glad that, yes, there's a lot of intelligence and efforts invested in Planet Positive. Let's join. And join the project and collaborate with our intelligence. Thank you so much.
Thank you.